Hey, good evening, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here for Live Weather Impact on this Wednesday evening, June 24th. What a glorious day. I hope you got outside today and enjoyed it, at least this morning, or if you're not outside this afternoon, get out there this evening, because we're going to start with what has been a beautiful day. I mean, it is just so delightful for June. I love it when we get these dry, somewhat coolish days in summer. It is a kind of a break from the heat and humidity, which we know is coming. It's inevitable, right? It always does. And some of the heat and humidity heading our way next week is going to be even crazy hot and humid by our standards. So you can see the temperatures this morning, as I expected. We had some 40s in the mountains, 50s really close by to Charlotte. We actually got down to 62 in Charlotte. That's pretty rare when the average low is closer to about 70 degrees. High clouds are moving out, so we're actually clearing the skies out even more now, which is going to make for a beautiful sunset. But the air mass is really dry, so temperatures are in the low 80s, 70s in the mountains. But with these dew points in the 40s, 50s, I mean, you can't beat that. That means we're going to cool down quickly. Radiational cooling will be optimal tonight, even by summer standards. Sunset tonight coming up at 8:42 p.m. One of the latest of the year. We'll have 8:42 sunsets here for a while as we get into the latest sunsets of the year. Temperatures will be in the 60s again in the morning, so very, very comfortable. And again, get out and soak this up, because normally I would say that, but knowing what's heading our way, you're probably going to really want to enjoy this even more. Tomorrow, even 90 won't be bad, because it'll be a dry heat tomorrow. So temperatures around 90, dew points are still low. Totally tolerable, not bad at all. It's going to be really a pleasant day. But Friday will be an interesting day, because two things happen. We kind of get a warm front that kind of pushes through, and what that does, it warms us up, but it also brings in humid air and the chance for pop-up storms. So I actually do think we're going to see at least scattered showers and storms on Friday. Not tomorrow, though. You'll see tomorrow afternoon's bone dry. Friday, we wake up to that humid air surging into the region, and then here comes the afternoon, evening storms on Friday. Again, pretty scattered. We'll likely be tracking them right here on Live Weather Impact. So stay tuned to that as we get into Friday and as well Saturday. Saturday will be another day with pop-up storms. So when we look at the rain chances, nothing widespread. I hope you get some rain, because we desperately need it, but there will be at least a 30, maybe 40% chance at times in the afternoon and evenings starting Friday, but through the weekend, even next week, with the heat building. It's going to be so intense. I do think we'll see at least small chances for pop-up showers and storms. The jet stream pattern kind of tells you what's heading our way. The heat dome starts to build this weekend, really accelerates going into the middle of the week, and probably a week from today. The talk here on this show is going to all be about heat, and we're talking hot air for any time of the year, but even for midsummer standards, this is going to be insane. Triple-digit heats for several days in a row, potentially all the way through the 4th of July. So this is not going to be a short-lived heat wave, and it really starts to develop the next couple of days. So I said tomorrow is not bad. You can see our heat risk, and this is the heat index, maybe 90-ish. I mean, so it's a dry heat, so it's going to feel exactly like the air temperature. Now, Friday, look at that. All of a sudden, we jump up to 100 for a feel-like reading. And then Saturday, yeah, that's the sauna, the air you can wear. We talk a lot about that. We are definitely going to have that building in our direction. When we look at the 7-day forecast here for temperatures, look at this ramp up. I mean, 90 is the cool day here, which will tell you just how hot it's going to be, because those temperatures ramp up into the mid-90s going into Sunday, Monday. By Tuesday, maybe upper 90s. Certainly by this time next week, upper 90s to near triple digits. And that always, gets the question. People ask me, and 100 degrees happens a lot here, right? Not really. Tim and I have talked about this a couple times. 95 and above is pretty rare. 100 is even rarer. In fact, in Charlotte, and this is not a joke or a lie, statistically, it snows more often in Charlotte than it hits 100 degrees. That is just the climatological averages. So 100 is not a normal thing for us. That's why last year was so bizarre. We did it 4 times. In fact, we hit 102 one point last year in July. So that was by far the most 100-degree days we'd seen in the past decade. You add up all the rest of the years, we only had one other day above 100. That was back in 2022. So to have 2 years in a row where we could touch 100 is really saying something as we go into next week. And we look at these temperatures, it really is going to be all because of this heat dome. And we're going to talk a lot about this with Tim coming up, because we're not the only ones seeing the heat. Europe is baking under record-breaking temperatures as well, because they have a similar pattern that's setting up over them. For us, this pattern sets up this weekend into next week, and you see the rain chances. So on top of the hot, humid weather with the heat dome, it's not going to rain much, just pop-up storms. So the drought monitor comes out tomorrow. That will include some of the rain we got last week. So there will be some encouraging signs, I think, in parts of the area. But I will be honest with you, this is going to be probably bad news for the drought. And we expected this because we weren't expecting the drought to end this summer, and there's certainly no signs of that happening, at least in the short term, with these dry conditions lasting through the beginning of July. So we're going to be stuck in this drought for the summer. The question is, in the fall and winter, will we get out of this because of El Nino forming? So let's look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. It's a slow but steady warm-up, and normally that's okay. We like to warm up slowly, but the problem is it doesn't really slow down. It just keeps going up a little bit every day. We tack on a degree, 2 degrees, and also the overnight lows, which is the hidden danger of these heat waves. It's one thing to be hot during the day, but when you're only cooling down into the mid and upper 70s at night, you just can't get a chance to catch up. Your air conditioning is always running. And next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, triple-digit heat. Whew. That's going to be a scorcher. Okay, so stick around. The heat is a big story today. We're also tracking storms in Colorado. We'll have some live pictures from out there. That's coming up with Tim in just a couple minutes.
Weather Impact Live with Brad Panovich is sponsored by Moisture Lock, crawl space, basement, and foundation repair experts serving the Carolinas since 1988.
Tired of all this rain? Does your yard look like a swamp after it rains? Hi, I'm Greg Doggett with Moisture Lock, Charlotte's premier waterproofing and foundation repair company. The longer water sits, the softer soil will become. This can cause foundation issues. If you're having drainage issues, contact Moisture Lock. We'll get the water away from your home and out of your yard.
Moisture Lock, stabilize, enhance, protect.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Tim Buckley joins me from WFMY. We're going to start with a little bit of breaking news, Tim. We had a pretty big earthquake down in Venezuela. This is an active seismic zone, but this is pretty strong for northern, central, and southern America. You don't normally see quakes this big in Venezuela, and this happened just minutes ago.
Yeah, Brad, it did. It did. It just happened within the last half an hour, and so we're still kind of gathering information, putting this into context for everybody. Not my research here, but what I'm seeing on Twitter, it appears that this ranks to be the 6th strongest to ever strike the country of Venezuela, so that's pretty significant. It's a 7.1, at least initially, and just to kind of put folks reference here geography-wise, if we zoom way out just to kind of show you where we are in the world, here we are in the Carolinas, Venezuela. It's on the bottom of the Caribbean Sea, so a lot of people go cruising in this area. It's right off by Aruba, so if you ever have friends or family that have gone to there, or if you've been able to go there or something like that, that's the nearest country. So you have the ABC Islands right here, Aruba, I forget the other one, Curacao. And then there you have it. That's where the earthquake was. And it looks like, Brad, they always are kind of reassessing these. I wonder if they've gone with another intensity just yet. It looks like they're both the same on my map.
Yeah.
So 7.1 is no joke. And the infrastructure plays a role here. It's 8 miles deep, which, that's close enough to the surface to cause problems. And just doing a quick scroll through Twitter, some reports of maybe some buildings collapsing, or at least one. So this is a big deal, and we'll start to see more about this, I'd imagine, in the next couple of hours.
Yeah, that would be significant shaking in that area. I'm looking at the pager output from USGS, and significant area affected, the significant population exposure. So this has all the indications of significant impacts. And just to give people a kind of perspective, so this is our local seismograph. This is in Blacksburg, South Carolina, right on the border. And just to show you, that's what the quake looked like locally. These seismic waves, which I think people don't realize, we may not feel them here locally, Tim, but they do travel through the entire crust. They travel through the mantle. So they are registered on local seismographs. And that's why, as Tim just alluded to, when they reevaluate, as more seismographs get the data, they can triangulate and get better information. It just becomes more accurate as the waves hit more sensors around the globe, and they can actually refine this. So if you see the shift in the location or even an update in the magnitude, it's because more seismographs have detected the waves and they get a better measurement. But that's pretty significant. And as you mentioned, Tim, correctly, the infrastructure down there is not great. They don't have really significant building codes for earthquakes in northern Venezuela. It's a very poor region. And so I would expect that there's probably a lot of destruction there, and it's something we're going to have to keep a close eye on.
And I can add from the producer desk, too, it looks like Puerto Rico has a tsunami advisory.
Which is interesting because it looks like it was onshore.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it says...
And that was something I wondered about when we first heard.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, so James is going to give us more on that, but just to pull up the map, Puerto Rico's due north, basically. So that energy could travel a bit across the Caribbean, or they might just be being cautious considering the strength and the depth of that thing. But, that wave energy would kind of spread out in all directions if it was close enough to the coastline. So interested to learn any more about that.
What I can share from what I'm reading from the National Weather Service there is that if there was a tsunami wave, it would arrive at 7:19 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. So isn't that a time zone earlier than Eastern?
Correct, yeah.
So it would already have been there?
Yep.
Okay.
So it would have traveled pretty quick, which makes sense. Yeah, I'm looking at that advisory too.
You're right.
So yeah, this is a U.S. advisory, so the U.S. Virgin Islands are considered in that as well, and so that's why Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So we'll find out quickly. It is an advisory, which is kind of the middle of the road here.
Oh, just real quick. There's a daylight time discrepancy, so it's Atlantic Standard Time, which means this time of year they're the same as us.
Same.
So right now it is 6:44 in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
So they've got about 40 minutes yet to go before it would clear.
Yeah.
And I can actually put on the screen, there's actually included in this bulletin kind of a better timestamp indication of how much of a tsunami wave they're anticipating, and it's pretty low. Like Brad, you're starting to say, it's an advisory, right? So it will be existent, but kind of on the lower side. So below 1 foot is the forecast height, arriving as early as 7:19 p.m. and lasting for maybe upwards of 6 hours. So elevated coastal sea of about a foot.
Yeah, so probably the big thing is sometimes when you see these smaller tsunami advisories like this, the waves aren't really big, but you get a lot of bad currents and rip currents and stuff because there's a lot of water movement in that area. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on that, Tim. That is a pretty big quake for that part of the world. And anytime you see quakes down there, very highly densely populated area too, which means a lot of people were impacted by that. So we'll keep an eye on that. James will keep an eye on that if we get any updates on that. The other big story, that was our breaking news, obviously, Tim, is the developing heat wave, but we should focus first on how awesome the weather is right now. We joked yesterday like we were going to see some upper 40s, and sure enough, we had 40s in the mountains, a lot of them, 49 in Boone, and the 50s all across the Piedmont, all the way almost to Charlotte. I mean, 62 in Charlotte for late June is almost unheard of, and to see these 50s, that's a rare treat.
Yeah, a rare treat to say the least. And, we said enjoy it while it lasts. This is probably the last one. Well, I forgot. We're probably going to do it again tonight.
Yeah.
So overnight tonight, it's still going to be pretty comfortable getting down into the upper 50s across the area, Brad. I was stunned. Our high temperature came in at 81 for today. I really thought we'd still be around 84, 85. Our drought has typically been bumping our temperatures up just a little bit, but 81 with full sunshine on June 24th, unheard of.
Yeah, that's just, it really is. And I think that's what is going to make the heat feel even worse, is the fact that you've went through this great middle of the week. And it really is a time to get out and enjoy it. You don't often get to roll the windows down. Last night I'm coming home from work, I'm like, I don't have the AC on. It just feels great. Get up this morning, I'm like, I'm not even sweating outside. So if you have any yard work, you got to get the lawn mowed or get some work done on the house. Today or tomorrow probably would have been the days to do it, because, coming up next week, Tim, we're probably going to be warning people not to do much of anything in the middle of the day. That's the kind of heat that's going to be heading our way. Let's talk about our local heat first, because it's going to be a big story. We've got some current heat in Europe we're going to get to in a minute. But let's talk about this heat wave. It's a slow build, Tim, but I think the thing that worries me, it's a slow build, but it just keeps crescendoing. It doesn't really like when does the wave of heat crest? It just seems like it keeps going up all the way into next week, and you wonder, where's the limit of this before it kind of levels off?
It's hard to say when it'll end. So I do think you're right that, it's going to build up to it, but, our crystal ball gets foggier once you get beyond 7 to 10 days. The heat wave's still there at that point. So we're going to still be dealing with it at least through next Wednesday, probably beyond that. To me, it's looking like, Brad, it's probably going to start to get really bad by about Tuesday. Maybe Monday, but probably by about Tuesday is when it really kind of flexes. That's when that ridge, which you're showing, we talked about it yesterday, that heat dome is not fully centered over us until maybe the middle of next week. And then we're in it. You're not going to get any storms at that point. You're just going to cook, and it's going to be super hot.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. I think Wednesday's the first day I'm going near triple digits, but then we do a 10-day forecast here. I go out through the 4th now, and Wednesday through Saturday, I think any one of those days could easily be 100 degrees for Charlotte, which, we've said this before, that's kind of rare for us, though last year was kind of the anomaly. I rebuilt this graphic because we did it last year. The 100-degree days in Charlotte, last year we had 4 of them, Tim. We actually got to 102, and ironically it happened in July last year after a somewhat cool to mild June. But if you look back at the last decade, 5 total times. 4 of them were last year. So it's not something we do all the time. It just feels like the last year, and this year we might do it again. So this is rarefied air, and we're in that hot time of year. People always say, hey, it's just summer. Yeah, summer in 90, okay. Summer in low 90s, yeah. 95 plus is where that starts to get on that fringe of the anomalies where we're out of that standard deviation of what is kind of normal for our area.
It's true. So if you think back, maybe, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago now, 10 to 12 days ago, we had another bad heat wave, right? Yeah. Raleigh was 100 and something every other day, it seemed. We were in the upper 90s in both Greensboro and Charlotte for a number of days. It's hard to say that this will be worse guaranteed, but it'll probably be just as bad, if not worse, and maybe longer as well. So this is something that definitely looks likely to start next week. And we'll take a look at that heat risk. I guess that product only goes out maybe about every 5 days, Brad? Did they do it beyond that?
They do 7 days, but for whatever reason, the KMLs only go to 5 days. So it's It's kind of weird how
That's why I'm thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah, the product. But yeah, you see it kind of. It is interesting, Tim. We talked about this yesterday. Where's the heat dome kind of centered? It really looks to be centered west, but I've seen today some of the guidance kind of shifts it east a little bit as the week goes on next week. So I think the heat this weekend builds to our west and then spreads in through time. The real question is, when you get in these heat domes, it's all about the dew points, how bad these heat risks get, because sometimes, especially in a drought, we can mix out the dew points, but if they don't mix out and we have 70-degree dew points, that's where you get the heat advisories and excessive heat warnings for our area. So that'll be the big question. Do we see the dew points mix out at all?
Yeah, and that'll factor in, ahead of time too, with whether or not we get any storms. So I certainly think that storms might be part of our days on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Probably less so going into next week once you get underneath that heat dome. But we might be tracking the radar again. You might have to have flexible plans again, at least in my area, coming up this weekend.
Yeah, certainly Friday, Saturday, Sunday look like the kind of afternoon, evening thunderstorm train gets going. But we're talking about the heat locally, and kind of the big story globally, Tim, has been this heat wave in Europe, which has been insane. The upper level pattern, if this looks familiar, this is what's going to be over us next week, a heat dome. Right. They've had it camped out over Western Europe, and some of these temperatures, Tim, have just been like off the charts. In fact, especially in France, the record high temperature, 108 degrees. The high today was 85 or 105, excuse me. And you can see the record heat continuing over the next couple of days. I think what people in the U.S. don't understand, Tim, and when they see this heat, this is really abnormal for parts of Europe. And in Europe, they don't have air conditioning in widespread areas. I know it's kind of like you've seen it during the World Cup, how the Europeans are like marveling at the fact that we have ice water and refills and air conditioning, because these just aren't things that are commonplace in Europe. So this ends up being really deadly because people can't cool themselves, and you're seeing all these fatalities from drownings, which is a side effect of this. People are trying to cool off in water, and they've seen a big uptick in drownings, which is just, it's crazy to think about. But those are all the factors we don't consider sometimes when these heat waves build overseas.
Yeah, I was just looking into this a little bit yesterday, and at a quick glance, it appears only about 20 to 30% of French homes have air conditioning.
Wow.
And you can say whatever you want about that. It doesn't change the fact that that's reality. That's what they deal with. They could install it, I guess, but they don't. So that when these heat waves hit, it's a huge impact. And this is something, record-setting all time. Think about that, 108 degrees.
Yeah.
Greensboro's never hit 108 degrees. Charlotte probably hasn't. Yep. I don't know what your all-time record high is.
104.
Ours is 104. So it's hard to do that. And to see it's not just a little pocket of the country. It's most of the western half of the country that's dealing with that above 40 C, which is a bad threshold. They're extremely hot.
Yeah, James, can you bring up my laptop real quickly? So I pulled up the high temperatures today over in France. Actually, technically yesterday, because it's already tomorrow there. But you could see this. Look at these, Tim. These are the high temperatures today or yesterday, the 24th. Look at all the 105s, 106, 100 plus. You get into around Paris. I mean, very highly densely populated. Look at all those temperatures above 100 degrees. And then you see how this spreads down into parts of Spain, even into Portugal, and then up into London, around southeastern UK, they've had temperatures in the mid to upper 90s, which is really rare because you remember the North Sea and the English Channel, that's really cool water. So to have temperatures that hot up there is pretty wild. And just to give you perspective, from a latitude standpoint, Tim, I think this is what will blow your mind. It's 100 degrees, but if you go across the ocean directly from France, you're basically in like New England or like Quebec from a latitude standpoint. And so that really tells you just how hot it is for that latitude.
And the fact that they don't get hot, in England or the UK especially, it changes how they built the homes throughout the years. Historically, you build a home up there to try and hold the heat in. So that's how they're constructed, and it's just making it all the worse. And we talk about heat being deadly. It is, and over there especially so. So this is going to be a big problem. Brad, as we were talking there, I just got a buzz on my phone. Again, another earthquake now showing up in Japan, and this one's a 6.9. just
Wow.
off the coast of Japan here. This is at a very significant depth at about 38 miles. But for a reference point, it appears to be on the northern side of the Japanese archipelago here. I don't know, the closest city might be, I'm not super familiar with any of these, but it's north of Tokyo for sure, and pretty close to the shoreline. So that could have another, it's about 20 miles offshore. That could have
Yeah.
some significant impacts as well, and we'll look to the Tsunami Center for guidance on that one, but this also just happened.
Yeah, very active area out there. And, we should say, too, that not all quakes near water cause tsunamis. They have to be, a certain type of quake. Usually you have a megathrust quake, which is the crust moving up or down. The side-to-side movement tends to be less of an issue. But the two things we look for tsunamis are, do we have up and down movement? Is it in a shallow area with water above? And that's typically when we see a tsunami. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, Tim. But, yeah, two back-to-back quakes.
Nothing yet from the Tsunami Center.
Yeah, so James just said nothing from the Tsunami Center. So, two earthquakes happening during our show here, one in Venezuela, one in the northern
Crazy.
part of Japan, pretty far north there. We'll see. I haven't seen anything come out from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, which is based in Honolulu. They tend to cover all the Pacific, but they'll issue advisories for other parts of the world, especially after the Indian Ocean tsunami. They started issuing advisories for other locations, which is something they do across the globe. They have great science out there, Tim. So
This is a live look at the buoy network.
yeah, the buoy network, they've got the when you see the buoys flashing, that means they're in like rapid data collection mode to see if they measure any tsunamis. You don't see the Pacific lighting up, but you see the Caribbean ones lighting up a little bit there to take into account for that Venezuelan quake, which was 7.1 and now a 6.9 in northern Japan.
Yeah, and you talk about places that get a lot of bad earthquakes. Japan is toward the top of the list, right? And they have some of the best building codes and all these things to kind of
Yeah.
account for these things. So we'll see what the impact is up there, but just kind of have to wait and see for now.
All right, so we're running out of time, Tim. We'll talk probably more about the heat tomorrow. Obviously, the drought monitor comes out tomorrow. We'll see what kind of improvement or no improvement we had in parts of the Carolinas. We'll see.
Yeah. I'm anxious to see it. I don't actually know what to expect.
Yeah.